Canada did not have the F-35. Do you think that American planes would more often be in Canada?
That changes our, defense capability, and as such, we have to figure out how we're going to replace it.
Good evening, and welcome back to Skyjet Wings. For months now, Donald Trump's message to America's allies has been remarkably consistent and remarkably damaging. From sweeping tariffs slapped on friendly nations, to openly floating the idea of taking over sovereign territory, to the latest escalation, threatening 100% tariffs on Canada for the simple act of pursuing trade with China. Individually, each move raises eyebrows. Taken together, they send one unmistakable signal. Across the globe, allies are reaching the same conclusion. Trump's America is no longer a reliable partner. And when reliability disappears, strategy changes. Countries aren't confronting Washington head-on. They're doing something far more consequential. They're adapting, they're hedging, and increasingly, they're moving away. Canada is one of the clearest examples of that shift. Ottawa hasn't just talked about diversification, it has quietly acted on it, reducing economic exposure to the United States, expanding alternative trade channels, and even beginning to rethink military dependencies that were once considered untouchable. The most visible symbol of that rethink has already been discussed many times: Canada's troubled F-35 fighter jet. But something new has now emerged, something that shows just how serious this rupture has become, not just for Canada, for the United States itself. Before we get to that turning point, it's important to understand how we arrived here. Back in 2023, Canada committed to buying 88 F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin. On paper, it made perfect sense. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter in the Western arsenal, a true fifth-generation aircraft. Stealth capabilities, advanced sensor fusion, deep integration with US and NATO forces. For decades, choosing the F-35 was almost automatic for America's closest allies. It wasn't just a weapons system. It was a symbol of trust, alignment, and a shared strategic future. But circumstances changed. Despite the original commitment, Canada has so far taken delivery of only 16 jets. Then came a moment that quietly signaled a break from the past. Shortly after taking office, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a review of the remaining aircraft, a decision that came just days after Donald Trump imposed new tariffs on Canadian goods. That timing wasn't accidental. It was a message. Because when economic pressure starts bleeding into security relationships, even sacred assumptions come under review. And this is where the story stops being about aircraft and starts being about power, leverage, and the future of alliances. The timing wasn't subtle. It was impossible to ignore. Just as political tensions with Washington were escalating, the cost of the F-35 program exploded. Canada's Auditor General revealed that the total price tag had climbed to roughly 28 billion Canadian dollars. That figure triggered alarm bells in Ottawa, not just about affordability, but about long-term value, accountability, and political optics. Cost overruns in defense procurement aren't unusual. They happen everywhere. But this wasn't happening in a vacuum. Layered on top of trade disputes, tariff threats, and increasingly hostile rhetoric from Washington, the rising cost took on a much deeper meaning. This is where the story stopped being only about Canada. Reconsidering the F-35 was no longer a routine budget review. It became a strategic question. Does it still make sense to tie Canada's most critical defense systems to a partner that has demonstrated a willingness to use economic coercion, even against its closest allies? That question cut to the heart of leverage, autonomy, and vulnerability. And the concern only intensified as Donald Trump began framing tariffs not as temporary negotiating tools, but as permanent instruments of national power. That framing matters, because once economic pressure becomes structural, it bleeds into every other domain: trade, diplomacy, and eventually, security. Against that backdrop, Ottawa began doing something it had rarely done before. It started seriously exploring alternatives, and one company moved quickly to fill that opening. Sweden's defense firm Saab stepped forward with an aggressive pitch for its Gripen fighter jet, either as a replacement for the F-35 or as part of a mixed fleet. On paper, the Gripen is a 4.5 generation aircraft. It lacks the full stealth profile of the F-35, and Canada's own Defense Department rated it lower in a 2021 evaluation. But Saab's argument was never just about raw performance. It was about economics, sovereignty, and control. Saab promised to establish a production line in Quebec, the heart of Canada's aerospace sector. It offered domestic manufacturing, local research and development, and, critically, access to intellectual property. That last point matters, because it determines who controls upgrades, maintenance cycles, and future capabilities, the customer or the supplier. Saab went further. It suggested that Canadian-built Gripens could be exported, including to Ukraine and other allied markets. Not a one-time purchase, but a long-term industrial anchor. And when Saab paired the Gripen with its GlobalEye airborne surveillance aircraft, the numbers became politically impossible to ignore. The company claimed the combined programs could create 12,600 direct jobs in Canada, with additional spillover into advanced manufacturing, engineering, and defense research. At that point, the debate was no longer about stealth versus non-stealth. It was about whether Canada wanted to remain a customer or begin reclaiming its role as a producer. And that choice would have consequences far beyond Ottawa. For a government openly trying to reduce reliance on the United States, Saab's offer landed with real force. This wasn't theoretical anymore. It was actionable leverage. Industry Minister Melanie Joly made it clear that Ottawa intended to use that leverage. She publicly stated that she would meet with Lockheed Martin executives, not to rubber stamp a decision, but to force competition. Her message was direct. Canada had received what she described as a very interesting offer from Saab, and in her words, it is our duty to look at it very seriously. The implication was unmistakable. If Lockheed wanted to keep Canada in the F-35 program, it would need to match Saab on jobs, on research and development, and on industrial participation inside Canada. But walking away from the F-35 has never been a cost-free option, and a development that emerged yesterday shows just how high those costs could be. In an exclusive interview with CBC News at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra issued a blunt warning about the consequences of Canada scaling back its F-35 commitment. His message was not framed as a threat, but it landed like one. Hoekstra said that if Canada does not provide sufficient advanced fighter capability, NORAD would have to be altered. The United States, he warned, would likely need to purchase more advanced fighters for its own Air Force and fly them more frequently into Canadian airspace to address threats approaching the U.S. homeland. If Canada is no longer going to provide that capability, he said, then we have to fill those gaps. To understand why that matters, you have to understand NORAD. For decades, the North American Aerospace Defense Command has operated on a simple principle: the closest aircraft response, American or Canadian, regardless of which side of the border the threat originates. That system is built on trust, interoperability, and shared responsibility. And it's not hypothetical. In September, U.S. F-15s responded near Calgary after a bomb threat on a German airliner. 2 years earlier, an American F-22 shot down a suspicious cylindrical balloon over the Yukon. U.S. jets already operate over Canada, regularly, legally, and under NORAD authority. Hoekstra described the current defense relationship as awesome, but he made his warning explicit. If Canada does not expand its F-35 purchase beyond the 16 jets currently on order, U.S. military operations over Canadian airspace would increase. Those remarks were met with immediate caution. Canadian officials stressed that public pressure only benefits adversaries and risks undermining the credibility of shared deterrence. Political disputes, they noted, come and go. NORAD's mission does not. But Hoekstra did not walk the statement back. He remained firm. And with that, what began as a procurement debate crossed a critical line, from economics and industry into sovereignty, airspace control, and alliance dynamics. Hoekstra went further. He warned that if Canada were to select the Swedish-built Gripen, then NORAD itself would need to be rethought. His argument was technical and pointed. If they decide they're going with an inferior product, he said, one that is not as interchangeable, not as interoperable as the F-35, that changes our defense capability. And as such, we have to figure out how we're going to replace that. That framing mattered, because it shifted the conversation from capability differences to acceptable behavior inside an alliance. A former senior Canadian national security official described the remarks as a clear political pressure tactic designed to force Ottawa's hand at a sensitive moment. In his view, it was another off-the-cuff intervention from the ambassador. It couldn't be ignored, but it also shouldn't be treated as gospel truth from either the US administration or the Pentagon. And crucially, Canada isn't alone in reassessing its F-35 relationship. Denmark, another F-35 buyer, has found itself quietly regretting its decision amid growing tension with Donald Trump, particularly over his public push to assert control over Greenland. Danish lawmaker Rasmus Jarlov admitted to serious second thoughts. But he said Denmark has little choice now. The F-35 is its only operational fighter aircraft. They're in for repairs about half the time, or even more, Jarlov warned. And the Americans have all the power of actually destroying our Air Force just by shutting down parts supplies.
His advice to Canada was blunt: choose another fighter jet. Public opinion in Canada appears to be moving in the same direction. A December Ecos poll found that 72% of Canadians support incorporating Sweden's Gripen into the fighter fleet, either by switching entirely or by maintaining a mixed fleet. That option carries real costs: separate training pipelines, different maintenance systems, parallel infrastructure.
But the political signal is unmistakable. Trust has become conditional. When Hoekstra was asked whether he recognized the implications of Canada choosing the F-35, while many Canadians increasingly view the United States itself as a potential threat, amid Trump's repeated talk of a 51st state and the annexation of Greenland, he dismissed the idea outright. "That's crazy," he said. "We're not a threat." But the most revealing detail isn't the denial. It's the fact that the question is now being asked at all, because that alone shows how far this alliance has shifted and how deeply Trump's rhetoric has reshaped the strategic map, not just for Canada, for America itself. Thanks for watching.